my name is Ashna, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Hubtas, a quant research platform for investment and crowdfunding. And today, on the episode of Beyond the Forum C, we're talking with Siva, co-founder and president of JOGO Health. To start, can you share a quick intro about yourself and JOGO Health?
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of background on myself first before going into the company and why I joined JOGO Health. So I've been in healthcare for now almost 25 years. I worked as a consultant to pharma. I was mostly in commercialization of drugs when they passed the clinical stage. So I was part of the team that launched Botox and some of the other brands like Lyrica. Lyrica is for neuropathic pains. I was, my work has always involved pharmaceutical companies. 2010, I decided to start my first company. So in today's day and age, it would have been called an AI company, but we used machine learning to find drug side effects and vaccine side effects, right? Using We had large customers, Reckitt Benckiser, Pfizer, some of the large companies signed up. And I sold the company 3 years later to one of the largest clinical research companies in the world called IQVIA. IQVIA is a $47 billion company with 15 billion in revenue. So I sold my company to IQVIA, and I was leading this part of the business within IQVIA, which is automation of adverse events monitoring. Then Jago came to me for investments. I was one of the early angel investors in Jago. So Jago, the history of Jago is it originated at NYU in New York. Jago stands for Joseph and Gordon, right? Joseph Bradney, the two letters of Joseph and Gordon. That's how Jago as a company came about. So Dr. Joseph Bradney was a celebrated neurologist and a physical medicine rehabilitation doctor who conceptualized this idea that you could give sensory feedback to the brain using your muscle tension. So, your muscle produces electricity, and using this muscle electricity, you can feedback that to the brain visually, and you can recover patients who are suffering from stroke and all kinds of different diseases by training the brain and invoking the neuroplasticity of the brain, right? Where the brain has the natural capacity to rewire itself. So he was a doctor, so he couldn't build a machine. So he partnered with another engineer called Gordon Silverman. That's where the Go comes from in Jago. Uh, so Gordon Silverman, famously known for inventing the Easy Pass system in the United States. Both of them are 90 years old. Dr. Bradley had died now, right? So Dr. Silverman is still teaching AI at Columbia. So they created this machine back in the days, back in the 80s, to essentially help patients recover from stroke and nerve damage and other things where they have visual, people who have gone nerve damage, you'll see the faces go like this, and they were able to treat them and get them back. But the machine they created was only sitting at NYU, and nobody was able to commercialize it, right? Because they're physicians and researchers. And that's when my co-founder, the founder of Jago, Sanjay, he was approached by these two gentlemen to take this machine and create a commercial version of it. So he worked for almost 6 years before he met me. When he showed me this prototype, hey, this is amazing stuff. Can treat through process of neuroplasticity. I had no idea what it was when I met him. But I know I love the product. It was a prototype at that time. I wrote a check. Then that's how my journey started. So since then, they have, before I joined the company, they had shown me some tremendous outcomes in these patients who had, disabilities. I saw a patient with stroke who thought would never recover, go back and drive and go to work, right, after recovering with Jago. I saw in my own family members who have been suffering from low back pain, chronic low back pain, get treated with this, and others who are suffering from pelvic floor disorders like incontinence, urinary incontinence, which is a very common. 1 in 3 women suffer after childbirth, and they recover. And the turning point for me was one of my friend's daughters, my brother's friend's daughter. she had cerebral palsy, right? Cerebral palsy, it's a very disabling condition. Children cannot move. It's a movement disorder. This child, uh, when she turned 13, she told her parents that, she needed to go to the bathroom by herself. So somebody has to carry her to the bathroom otherwise, right? Then I checked with the team, and they said, yeah, this can be tried, and it can work. And we shipped a kit home. So this child was in India, right? So she was in India, and we shipped a kit. And the team from New York treated this child, and she made slow progression, right? So her drooling stopped in the mouth, and she was able to look up straight. And then with some support, she was able to walk. So that was a big change when I saw her. That was just before COVID, and I decided, hey, this is more than my investment, and I should probably quit my job again and join, because my background has been commercializing medical technology and pharmaceuticals. So I think I can bring my expertise into this area. So just before COVID, I left my job and I joined JOGO as a co-founder, and I also put in more money into the company. Uh, so my personal money, I've invested significant amount of money into the company, and here we are after a few years. So that's basically how I joined. I could tell you a little bit more about the story if you have a few more questions.
Yeah, I would love to hear more. And that's so great. You joined as an investor first and you believed in the product to be able to like join the company full time. That's awesome.
You don't get to do that. I've invested in many companies, and some of them have gone okay, some of them have, nowhere. This is something that's mission driven, and commitment from Sanjay and Gordon, and Gary is the other person who's involved in the company, is the chief scientific officer. Yeah, so since then, the first thing we had, the COVID hit after I joined, right? So I had to then we had to see what the next step is. The major next step was FDA. So without FDA approval, we cannot take it to market. So the product was ready. So we did a couple of clinical trials during COVID, all done virtually because none of the patients could come to the clinic. So it was all done virtually. So we partnered with Harvard Medical School, and we worked with the Brigham's and Women's Hospital, which is the teaching hospital, Harvard Medical School. So our first clinical trial was in chronic lower back pain. So we tried to see whether chronic lower back pain, how effective it is. And the results were amazing. Results showed that JOGO is superior to opioids in treating chronic lower back pain. And you see chronic, low back pain and opioids, a huge crisis in the country. And then we did another clinical trial in migraines, and it showed that when you add JOGO, patients are able to function better. They're able to go back to work. They're not able to others. Although their migraine medications are out there, they're not patients who take them. They cannot function. Um, the pain goes down, but they still cannot work. So this was effective. So then we went to FDA. FDA looked at this and said, "Hey, this is a known technology to us. It's actually can be cleared." So they took almost 18 months to review this, and they said, yes, you can go to market. And they gave us 6 indications that we could go to market for. So that was stroke recovery, of course, and migraine, cancer pain, tension type headaches, which is not a migraine, but people get headaches. Then chronic constipation, and fecal incontinence and urinary incontinence. So there's a bunch of conditions that we got. So we got a lot of there's a great success when FDA said that, hey, you could go to market. Then it took us another 18 months, and we took talk to Medicare and commercial payers to see whether they will pay for this. And yes, then we got some payment codes, and now physicians can deploy this and get paid for servicing patients. So that's important because patients can't pay out of pocket. So that's where we are. So now we have reimbursement. We are cleared by the FDA. Now we are just commercializing. Hence, we are raising funds. Right?
That's great. What makes your technology unique compared to other treatments available in the market?
So this is not a new science, Ashna, right? The science ever since Dr. Brodney created has been studied for many, many, many years. If you do what in medical they call a literature search, if you go do literature search, there are thousands and thousands of publications in this. The problem with other technologies that they kind of offshoots of what Dr. Bradley created they all stayed only in the labs. So there is basically nobody's having a device in the market right now, right? And it's our device basically is very easy to use. That's the most important thing, because if it's very difficult to use, doctors don't use it. They don't have time for setting and tuning a machine, right? You know how quickly you get out of the clinic. So we made it so we made it very, very easy for providers to physicians and physical therapists to use this. Right? It takes only 2 minutes to set up. And the second big thing is the accuracy of it. So any technologies like this, sensitive feedback, Elon Musk is working on something, not exactly this, but something similar. He puts an implant into the brain. Um, you want to be, I mean, that's much more invasive. We don't put anything into the body. It's all only reading it. But the concept is pretty, he's picking up the brain signals, we are picking up the muscle signals. Um, ours is FDA cleared. He's still just testing it on one human, I think, right now. Uh, but if it, you have to be very accurate to make sure that the patients get the right level of feedback. You don't want to give the wrong feedback to the patient, right? So our accuracy is very, very important. We have a pattern on that, our accuracy. The third biggest thing is ours is a telemedicine option is there. So patients can use it at home and doctors can treat them from anywhere in the world, right? So think of Africa. You can't go pay every single village to deploy this. Think of that. You could, send this device. It's a small device. It's a portable. It comes like a small box, and you ship it to the patient. And one device in a village can service multiple patients, and the providers can be on a Zoom, like you and me talking right now, and treat the patient. So that's the democratizing of this tech is the differentiator. That's a big differentiator that we have. Yeah. And we were the only, FDA reviewed device in this category right now.
That makes sense. How do you balance short-term profitability with long-term sustainability?
So medtech, like what we are in, we are medtech and also digital therapeutics, because software does a lot of work. Is a long game, right? It's a very long game, and it's the time it takes to take off. It's just a lot of things that needs to cross. One is FDA. First of all, you need to create a product. Second thing, you need to make sure the product is clinically validated. You can't just put something out there and see, okay, it's just because you're messing with people's lives. And then you have to go through FDA. So it's a long game. So if you really understand pharmaceuticals or anything medtech, it takes 16 years for a drug to go to market, right? From the day one and the 16. In our case, we have passed that 16 years. So now we are in the market. So I tell investors, you guys are coming in at the time when all the risk factors of the product is gone. Normally you would invest in a company expecting that to go through FDA, and many of the companies never get cleared by the FDA. So that's a huge risk, right? So even after FDA, then there's a process that if you don't get paid by commercial or Medicare, then that's a huge risk. You have a nice product, but nobody's paying for it. Um, we have crossed all those all those what the valley of death they call it, right? The multiple values of death in medtech. So we have crossed that, right? So that's an important piece. We are now at a stage of generating revenue. So your question was short-term profitability, long-term growth. We personally feel we have to be unit-wise profitable, because otherwise it's not sustainable. Nobody's going to give you unlimited amount of money so that's a big mistake many companies make. Take so much money, they've never been profitable, then they can't raise their next round. We are not profitable yet, will soon be, but we are growing slowly. So I tell my investors, hey, you guys watch us, that you're not going to see this hockey stick crazy growth and then suddenly crash down like other companies. You're going to see slow growth, but we'll be profitable, right? So we're building a very disciplined company that will be profitable soon. It's a disaster. Many companies just take up so much money, then and their companies will raise around $1 billion and go crashed, right? So
Yeah. Where do you see JOGO Health in the next 5 years?
So we currently, as I said, we are very disciplined about how we launch. So we have launched um, I get inquiries from 50 different countries, right? And we haven't even gone out of 3 states yet, right? So in the United States, think of going to another country because this has to be done properly. So we are right now operational in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, to some extent in Florida because of Mayo Clinic. Mayo wants us to work there. Mayo is an investor in JOGO. Uh, so the next couple of years, our goal is to just go across U.S. and different states. In healthcare, every state in the U.S. has different laws. So you have to be very careful how we launch in each of these states. So you'll be launching each state at a time. Then we are thinking of out licensing this to other companies in other countries, right? We've been approached by a couple of companies in China. We already India, we're doing it ourselves. Um, but we have to just go across the world. So in 5 years, I think you're going to see JOGO in, of course, in all 50 states in the United States. Number one goal for us. Number two, you're going to see in some of the major markets, India, China, Brazil, and some of these other markets. And then we are waiting on Europe um, for various other reasons, for regulatory approvals and other things. So we're going to take a very measured approach, but it's a long game, and it's like the barrier to entry is extremely difficult for somebody to come in and just disrupt this because it takes so much. And anybody who understands health tech, they would know this. It's so difficult to do this, and we have crossed it. The most complex part of this, which is FDA clearance and Medicare approval and all these things. Now it's in the hands of the patients. Now we need to just slowly go one state at a time and one country at a time.
Great. So my last question is, what led you to choose a crowdfunding route, and how do you believe it will benefit both the company and the investors who support you?
Yeah, so the crowdfunding came about. It's an interesting story. A lot of the patients who benefited from JOGO wanted to invest,
Mm.
right? And then there are folks who are not high net worth individuals, but believed in a mission, or some in their family member had a stroke, or someone had some other disease that either we cured or they could not cure, so they were looking to make an impact, right? And these are not high net worth individuals, so they asked me, hey, can we invest in your company, right? So at that time, so I did not know about crowdfunding until that problem came about, and I was a little initially hesitant because I wasn't sure what the venture capital world will think about it, right? Then I went and spoke to a couple of VCs. Some of them said, "Don't do it," right? But the major ones, like I looked at some large ones like Anderson Horowitz and others. They were actually encouraging their companies to do crowdfunding, right? Then that gave me a lot of confidence, and we were one of the early ones during COVID to do this, and we raised I think about $2.3 million in our first round. It was a huge success, and I'll tell you, this has been the most beautiful thing that we have done. Many of our large breakthroughs entering into customers or entering into some large health systems came because we did crowdfunding. You know, they've been very helpful. Anybody who just invested a few $100,000 were rooting for us, saying it's their money versus in the venture capital world. Unfortunately, no offense, the folks who manage their money, it's not their money, right? It's somebody else's money. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And you said you had some breakthroughs because of crowdfunding. Can you share like what they were?
Yeah, so I kind of turned my crowdfunding community into advocates for JOGO, right? Because this is basically a new technology, so we had a lot of patients who benefited from this, and they became our voice, right? That's number one. Then we are just about to sign a pretty large contract with a pretty significant health system. It's a group practice, large group practice with some 18, 90 locations. Interesting. Can you guys talk to them? So these deals are happening because the crowdfunding community has become our sales channel, right? So that I think wouldn't have happened without this. So I find it very fascinating, and I love it. Uh, I think that crowdfunding has to parallelly will have a place in the investment world in the next couple of years. more and more companies like ours. We could have gone completely the VC route, but we made a choice and decided to do this, which is good.
Perfect. No, I'm glad you did as well. Definitely crowdfunding, seeing it grow and better and better companies and deals getting in front of investors. It just seems to be moving in the right direction. So that's all the
Yes.
questions I have. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay, so thanks for the invitation, Ashna.